Welcome to episode 83 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. It's January 22nd, 1942. We are at the Estadio Centenario in Montevideo. And while the world is on fire, with World War II expanding across continents, South America is doing something that feels almost unreal in hindsight, packing a national stadium for a full international championship, night after night, as if the map of global crisis stops at the Atlantic. Then Argentina do something even more surreal. They beat Ecuador 12-0. 6 goals in the first half, 6 goals in the second. A player scores 4 in one half, and another player scores 4 in the other. One of those players is José Manuel Moreno, El Charro, who in total scores 5 in this match. This is still the biggest winning margin in what we now call the Copa América, then officially the South American Championship. How did Latin American football get so strong, so early, that it could produce a scoreline like this? How did Argentina and Uruguay turn the Rio de la Plata into football's first great rivalry? And how did Ecuador arrive at this tournament so exposed? And why does the match become famous not just for the number, but for the line written afterward, that there was no mockery? In 1942, it is not the Copa América yet. It is the South American Championship, the Campeonato Sudamericano, CONMEBOL's original tournament, born in 1916 around Argentina's independence centenary celebrations, and built by the first great South American football triangle, Uruguay, Argentina, and Brazil, plus Chile. In other words, this competition is older than the World Cup, and by the 1920s and 30s, it has already become a proxy stage for identity and supremacy, because these are the decades when Uruguay become a global football power, Olympic gold in 1924 and 28, and then the ultimate flex, the first World Cup in 1930. And who do they beat in that final at the Centenario? Argentina. So when you talk about rivalry between Uruguay and Argentina, don't think modern marketing. Think foundational trauma and memory. This is one of football's earliest elite duels. 2 nations, 1 river between them, both convinced they invented the correct way to play. Now add Argentina's own transformation. In 1931, Argentine league football turns professional. Money, crowds, and club infrastructure accelerate the game's evolution. That matters because professionalization does what it always does. It concentrates talent, raises tactical standards, and creates super teams. And in early 1940s Argentina, there's one mythical club name that hovers over everything: River Plate, La Máquina, the machine. A forward line that becomes folklore, and a style that becomes exportable. Rhythm, movement, combinations, and finishing that feels like choreography. And at the heart of this era's Argentina, both club and country, are a few names you need for this story. 2 representing La Máquina, and 2 other legends in their own right. José Manuel Moreno, El Charro, river idol, genius, a leader, the first player ever to having won the domestic title in 4 different countries. Over the course of 20 years, in addition to winning with River Plate in Argentina, he also won with AC España in Mexico, with Universidad Católica in Chile, and with Independiente Medellín in Colombia. Then there's Adolfo Pedernera, El Maestro, the connector, the brain between lines, another pillar of La Máquina. And in the early 1950s, he was part of the great Ballet Azul at Millonarios in Colombia, a fantastic story we'll do an episode on later this year. And then these 2, Enrique Garcia, El Poeta de la Zurda. He played for Racing, perhaps Argentina's best left winger of all time. No fan of tactics, he dribbled, swerved, and ran circles around defenders, and his right leg merely acted as a crutch for his left, with which he scored over 100 goals. Herminio Masantonio played most of his career for Huracán, for whom he scored more than 250 goals in the Argentina Primera División, and remarkably, 21 goals for Argentina in just 19 internationals. Now add one more name associated with Huracán, the man on the bench, Guillermo Stábile. If that name rings bells, it should. Stábile is famous for scoring a hat-trick on the debut for the Argentina national team at the 1930 World Cup, and he also scored in the first final against Uruguay, in which Argentina lost 4-2. Stábile retired after that final as the 1930 World Cup's top scorer, and with 8 goals in just 4 matches for Albiceleste. And by the 1940s, he has become the defining coach of Argentina's early golden era, winning 6 South American championships across the decade. I have always wondered if the World Cup hadn't been suspended due to World War II, if Argentina, with its La Máquina core, would have won that Jules Rimet trophy, which ultimately eluded AFA. Another story for another day. Okay, so Argentina arrive in Uruguay with something close to a national team superstructure, professional players, a coherent style, and a manager who knows exactly how to weaponize it. Ecuador, by contrast, are still building the basics. Their federation is young, their competitive calendar is limited, and their international football is a thin thread. Ecuador's first international was in August 1938, and their debut in this championship only a few years earlier, 1939. And by 1942, they're still taking the heavy lessons of what it means to face the continent's established powers. And that brings us to the global backdrop I hinted at earlier. Because in January 1942, the war is not some distant headline. The United States has already entered the war after Pearl Harbor in December 1941, and on January 1st, 1942, the Allies signed what became known as the Declaration by United Nations, formally aligning the wartime coalition. In Europe, football is fractured, redirected, or suspended, and the World Cup planned for 1942 was cancelled after the outbreak of the war. But South America keeps playing, and in Montevideo, at the stadium built for the 1930 World Cup, the South American Championship of 1942 runs as a full round robin, 7 teams, 21 matches, all in one city and one stadium. Which means that, in a strange way, this tournament becomes a snapshot of a continent's football self-confidence in the middle of global collapse. Now enter Ecuador. By the time Argentina meet them on January 22nd, Ecuador have already been hit hard, most brutally by the hosts Uruguay, who smashed them 7-0. So yes, Argentina are expected to win, but nobody expects 12. Let's go into the match. We are Centenario, 9:30 at night. The first goal comes almost immediately, just 2 minutes in. It's the poet on the left wing, Enrique Garcia, who swerves and uses that left leg of his, 1-0. And then the match becomes Moreno's stage. In just 10 minutes between the 12th and 22nd minutes, he scores a hat-trick. His third goal marks the 500 goal mark in Copa history. Then he adds another, and it's 5-0 after half an hour, and the match has stopped being competitive. Now it becomes an avalanche. And right before halftime, Pedernera adds his name to the score sheet. It's 6-0 at the break. Now, you'd assume that the second half is about respect and restraint. But then the second half specialist appears, Herminio Masantonio, from Huracán, the Spanish word for hurricane. And Masantonio lives up to that and does something that rarely happens in international tournament football. He scores 4 goals in the second half. And now, in one match, 2 different players have scored 4 goals, 1 in each half. That combination is so rare it feels like a statistical glitch. By the 70th minute, Masantonio has taken the score from 6-0 to 10-0, all by himself. And then 2 more arrive late. Angel Peruca in the 88th minute. And then, because the story is not complete until El Charro signs it, Moreno scores his 5th in the 89th minute. Final score, 12-0. And here's the detail that gives you the era in one image. Centenario's scoreboard simply wasn't built for it. It was set up to display only up to 10 goals. So the match breaks the mechanism designed to record it. But the enduring line isn't mechanical, it's moral, because chronicles from the time emphasize that there was, quote, no mockery, no dancing in front of the opponent, no humiliation rituals, a massacre on the scoreboard without contempt on the field, which might be the most South American football sentence imaginable. Beauty and brutality, wrapped in pride, etiquette, and respect for their vanquished opponent. Now zoom out, because the twist of 1942 is that Argentina do not win the tournament. Uruguay, the hosts, do. Perfect record, 6 wins out of 6, and they secure the championship in their final match on February 7 by beating Argentina 1-0 in front of 70,000 at the Estadio Centenario. That is the Rio de la Plata rivalry in miniature. Argentina can score 12 and set an enduring record, and still lose the trophy when Uruguay win the one match that matters most. And yet, this 1942 championship sits inside a golden corridor for Argentina. Stabile's Argentina had won the South American Championship the year before, in 1941, and they will win the next 3, in 45, 46, and 47. That's 4 out of 5 championships in the 1940s. And they do it in a period where global football main stage, the World Cup, is absent because of World War II, which means South America's elite level is, for a time, self-contained, a continental ecosystem producing extraordinary teams in a world that cannot fully measure them. Post-war, Latin countries dominate the early World Cup narrative again. Uruguay in 1950, Brazil in 1958 and 62. Before Europe reasserts itself, the global center of gravity becomes a tug of war. Brazil's genius versus Europe's systems, right up until Argentina's modern re-emergence under Menotti in 78 and then Maradona in 86. And Ecuador? The long arc is almost the mirror image of this night. In 1942, they are a team absorbing trauma-level lessons. But Ecuador do not stay small forever. They grow into a serious South American presence, best Copa finishes of 4th place, and a modern identity built on athleticism, pressing, and elite-level development. And on the biggest stage of all, Ecuador becomes World Cup regulars in the 21st century, qualifying multiple times, including 2002, 06, 14, 22, and again this upcoming summer, turning from first-generation participant into proper CONMEBOL representative, which makes the 12-0 on this day in 1942 feel even more distant, not because it is erased, but because Ecuador's football identity eventually becomes strong enough to outgrow its worst historical night. And today, this match sits where all mythical scorelines sit, as a record that survives because it is almost impossible to replicate. Modern international football, sports science, parity, defensive structure, does not hand out 12-goal margins easily, which is why, more than 80 years later, the 12-0 still stands as the Copa's most extreme scoreline. So what should we take away from January 22nd, 1942? Well, as always, 3 points. First, this match is not just a freak scoreline, it's a snapshot of football development curves. Argentina are the mature professional machine, Ecuador the early stage national team. The gap is not talent, it's ecosystem. Second, records are made by outliers, players who can turn a game into a personal event. Moreno scoring 5 and Masantonio scoring 4 is not normal football, it's historical football. And third, the scoreboard can lie about the tournament. Argentina win 12-0 and Uruguay still win the championship. In South America's oldest rivalry, supremacy isn't measured in the biggest win, it's measured in the last win. On this day in 1942, Argentina wrote the Copa's biggest margin, 12 goals, no reply, and the punchline is still the most brutal one of all. They still didn't lift the trophy. That's all for episode 83 of OTD. If you have a great idea to an episode on this show, please email me at otd@17lawsguy.com. And don't forget to rate the show 5 stars and subscribe, and tell a friend so they can join in the fun as well. Tomorrow, in episode 84, 1939, and the mysterious passing of a goat of his time, Matthias Sindelar. You don't want to miss that one.